You are listening to the Unusually Well-Informed podcast.
Welcome to the Unusually Well-Informed podcast. I'm your host, Tim Hampton. My unusually well-informed guest today is Ethan Beute. Ethan is a marketing strategist with a focus on messaging and branding. He is a best-selling author and podcast host and the Chief Evangelist at BombBomb, a service that makes it easy to record, send, and track personalized videos. Today, Ethan and I are discussing the themes in his first book titled Rehumanize Your Business, co-authored with Stephen Pacinelli. Ethan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the invite, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. It's my pleasure. So, Ethan, in your book, Rehumanize Your Business, you argue that to attract people in support of our goals, we should aim to be known, liked, and trusted. Why is video so important to this?
So we've created so much distance with the digital channels that we've come to rely on. There's so many benefits to them, of course. A lot of it is around speed and efficiency. But what's lost in so much of it is that we've removed the messenger from the message, right? We don't attach to concepts nearly as well as we attach to people. And very often we attach concepts to people, right? So when we remove ourselves from the majority of our day-to-day communication, especially, this book was written pre-pandemic, but certainly the pandemic enhanced it because we were seeing each other even less, or at least seeing each other in a much flatter way. And so, obviously, know, like, and trust is built through exposure. It's built through familiarity. It's built through predictability and consistency, integrity between word and deed, and all these other things. But so much of it is built in face, voice, personality, expertise, enthusiasm, sincerity, gratitude, nuance, subtlety, all those things that we do naturally when we talk to each other that are absolutely stripped out, or at best, significantly muted or dampened when we go to digital and virtual and online channels.
I agree. And we were just talking a little bit before we began the show. This is actually the first time we've met synchronously, as we were talking about. But I felt like I knew you already, thanks to the messages that we had exchanged, particularly your messages to me, where they were video, they were content and personalized. So I did appreciate that. It definitely warmed things up.
Yeah, it really does. You just and so much of it is subconscious, right? You just, as soon as you see me on screen, and as soon as I saw you, because you sent me video messages back, it's like, oh, hey, it's Tim, right? We've never met. We've swapped some emails before, but if those emails hadn't contained videos, we would have not been in as warm a quick and motion-based posture upon initially meeting, because we would have had to go through, what I call the how's the weather questions, right? Just kind of the basic, like, what do we have here? What's going on? How are we
noticed
doing?
It's sunny there. Good for you.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it's sunny here often. I'm in Colorado Springs.
Very nice. So let's talk about the book a little bit. How did business become dehumanized?
Yeah, I think it goes back, and this is a theme that we didn't take on directly in the book itself, although we have already touched on a consequence of it, which is, faceless typed out text, faceless digital communication becoming the norm over the past 2 to 3 decades, and us increasingly entrusting our most important and valuable messages to faceless digital communication. But I think a lot of it goes back to the onset of the Industrial Revolution. Right, we're only 200 years out of its onset. We're not even 100 years really out of Henry Ford's assembly line. And in this window, let's just look at those 100 years between the onset of the Industrial Revolution and the establishment of the assembly line. The people and the machines, and the way that they began to work together, and the way that humans were used in that process, and the fact that they were cranking out uniform, homogeneous products for interchangeable consumers with interchangeable parts and interchangeable laborers. Like, there's just the mechanics of all of that. It's really difficult to underestimate, but it's also very difficult to observe directly the consequences of the fact that we're only a few generations removed from the onset of these things. And so when we think about the way that we do work, the way we think about work, the way we even structure our day, I mean, the 40-hour work week is a Henry Ford era thing, right? And it was, a lot of pay per work. And so, when we start to confuse the fact that this work is really all for and about people, like, what are we creating and delivering value for? Like, why have we created these companies, these organizations? Why have we built these teams? Why have we structured these departments? Why have we designed these systems and processes? If the answer is revenue, which at some level it is, then I think we're selling short, especially we're losing sight now of where we've gone as an economy. Ultimately, our own goals are about revenue at some level, but really revenue is a consequence. Revenue is a consequence of the creation and delivery of value or impact or benefit or success of other people. But we've really lost sight of that from time to time. And I think its roots are in kind of the extreme mechanization and a uniformity of everything. And that's what the people that we were led and managed by early in our career were led and managed by people who were even closer to it. And those people were led and managed by people who are even closer to it still, and then a couple, like links back, and these were the people, and so, we're slow to change in a lot of different ways. And I think things become normalized in much quieter and and by creepier, I don't mean like creepy, like there's someone peeking through my window. I mean, like just this like slow, gradual, steady creep. And all of a sudden it's normal. Yeah. It's normal that we don't look each other in the eye anymore. We just type things out.
Well, that's interesting because, the second book includes the term human-centered, right? Human-centered communication, right? It's right there. Yeah. Beautiful. And human-centeredness is a big topic these days. And I think it's playing to the theme that you're bringing up, which is we've spent 100 years figuring out how to fit the machines. And now we're saying the machines can fit us. And, it used to be we would send a telegram and you'd be charged per the letter and you'd have to rethink grammar just to get it down the line. But now we can actually just, the same way I'm talking to you with the ums and ahs, but the emotion involved, it doesn't cost anything anymore. You can do that with video now.
Yeah. And I really like that. Thank you for mentioning the newer book, Human-Centered Communication. Just the relationship between those two. Rehumanize Your Business is the what, why, who, when, and how of video, email, and video messaging. If you're wondering why this matters, how did it come to be? Who's doing it? When are they using it? Why are they using it? What are some of the technical considerations? Kind of the how components. That's all in there. In human-centered communication, we go wider than video, email, and video messaging and really take on all of our digital communication because we're going to be doing a lot more of it in the future, not less. And the subtitle of it is A Business Case Against Digital Pollution, which is the reason that, and I promise I'm coming around to your mention of the word emotion. The reason it's so important is that this industrialized approach to so much of our work has created a digital pollution that, whereas environmental pollution, air, water, soil, threatens our health physically and in other ways too. I mean, certainly an emotional issue, psychological issue, spiritual issue too. But digital pollution in particular is even quieter and more subtle than environmental pollution. You look out the sky and say, oh my gosh, yeah, there are obviously wildfires somewhere west of us because the winds have brought them here and I can barely see the sky, right? Mm-hmm. Which happens to us from time to time now here in Colorado on the Front Range. And digital pollution, on the other hand, is like this kind of threat to trust. And it's easier, and where that pollution is intentional, by the way, phishing, malware, cyber attacks, et cetera, it's really easy to manipulate humans and manipulate human psychology because these digital, virtual, and online spaces are both visually and emotionally impoverished in terms of communication. Mm-hmm. And so this idea that we can reinfuse the emotional components, that we can demonstrate our intent, we can demonstrate our motivation, we can demonstrate that we actually believe what we're saying, we can demonstrate in a way that you can feel that there's something in this for you and that I have your best interest in mind, that I am aligned with you on this in a way that a non-video digital communication simply can't deliver that. And yet, that's what humans have evolved to need and want from each other before we can even consider saying yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, I'll return this phone call. Yes, I'll reply to this email. Yes, I'll click this link. Yes, I'll download that attachment. Yes, I'll make that personal introduction. All the yeses that we need to be successful. A precursor to the kind of rational cost benefit evaluation that every human also does is, what is this person's intent? Am I going to be taken advantage of? Does this person believe what they're saying? Do they seem to have my best interests in mind? So when we add some video communication into the rest of what we're doing, we can restore all of the missing visual and emotional components that humans have evolved to need and want from one another. And so, in conclusion, if we want people to say yes, we should make it very easy for them to do it, not just by positioning what's in it for them. And that's certainly a great thing that a lot of people overlook somehow. But by doing it in video more often, it becomes much more clear and obvious that all the signs that point to yes actually point to yes.
Right. Well, so this brings me to something you got into in some detail in the book, and that is being on camera. It's the act of being on camera. So do you have any advice for people who struggle to show warmth and excitement on camera? I'm asking for a friend.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. So 2 things. I am of the mind that pretty much anyone working in a professional capacity can benefit from video email and video messages. And that's to say, whether it's 3 times a day or once a day or 10 times a day, depending on what's going on that day, that you consider, instead of getting intellectual, getting in your head and pecking the message out and hoping that people understand what you mean, that you can record a video. Right. Implied in that is that everyone and anyone can do this. So now that takes me to point 2, which is that this is not about carrying a show. This isn't about a homepage video. This isn't about building an amazing YouTube channel. This isn't about sustaining an amazing, super engaging 35-minute Facebook Live event or LinkedIn Live event. This is about you connecting and communicating with another person in a more rich and human way. And so I would offer to people that if you are one of these kind of thoughtful, analytical, perhaps quiet, perhaps subdued type of people, but you've had some degree of success in your career, no matter how deep that career is, that people have said yes to you. And it's an important part of why they said yes to various things, big and small, is because of who you are and the trust and rapport that you built with that person, the integrity between your word and your deed, the agreement between what you're saying and how you're saying it. And so if you're not a big personality who's enthusiastic, like about everything and like over the top and this extroverted type of person, you might feel like, oh, this isn't for me. This is for other people. The answer is that's not true any more than picking up the phone or showing up for a meeting is for other people, not for you. Now, is cold prospecting by phone for everybody? No, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about, if I'm going to type out a message in Slack or an email or in LinkedIn messaging, might it be better if I shared this in a video instead of typing it out? I think the answer for everybody is yes, but we can later get into, or now get into, why that's so hard for everybody to get started, even people with big personalities and extroverted tendencies.
Well, sure. Let's get into that. I mean, I would have assumed that this was something that some people really gravitate to, but you seem to be implying that it's a challenge for everyone, that it's not just the introverts.
Yeah. So, some people will immediately. So first I'll start here. There is a vulnerability to doing this. We have been trained by ourselves and by other people and by what's normal in the status quo in business and culture that we can have absolute control over our digital expression. We can shoot 5 photos, pick the best one and edit it and then post it. And if we find a better one, we can just remove it and post a different one. We can type up the email and then we can go back and switch things around. We can cut and paste, we can restate, we can be anxious about all these things and tweak it up just so, and then finally send it off at some point. We can correct any image down to the pixel. We can edit the videos that we're using for any purpose. So we're trained to have all of this control. But what happens in these simple personal video messages is that you actually have to let go and be yourself in a digital format for 30 seconds or 3 minutes or 12 minutes at a time. And that is difficult for a lot of people, primarily because unlike a Zoom call where it comes and goes, and you might kind of beat yourself up in your own head, like, oh, I shouldn't have said that thing, or, I could have answered that question better or whatever, but you can't redo it. There's no redos. In a video message, there is. So with BombBomb and all the other systems that allow you to do this, you record it and you can actually play it back. And you are your own harshest critic. You are going to judge every second of that video. You're going to hear every and it's going to sound 50 times louder to you than it is to anybody else. You're going to fuss over your hair or your collar, or did I say it right? Or this is goofy. No one else is going to make that judgment if you make the video about the other person and their problem or their question or their opportunity or whatever. If you make it about the other person and stop making it about you in your own head, you'll start to let go. The only way through this vulnerability is practice. You actually have to do it to work through it. Vulnerability is just discomfort in the face of risk or uncertainty or emotional exposure. When we think about it, everything good in our life that happened is characterized by risk and uncertainty and emotional exposure. Nothing amazing ever happened to you that didn't have some or all of those elements to it, period.
Yeah.
And we can go through examples if we want. And so I will say the vast majority of people are uncomfortable in the beginning, but the people that I've seen that have done all kinds of videos in a variety of formats, including video and email and video and messages, but who are also doing video a variety of other ways, when they're on stages or on webinars or in presentations talking about their video journey because it's so remarkable that people want them to teach it to other people, they will often bring out their first video and it sucks. It's bad. They're awkward. They're sweaty. The lighting sucks. And that's just part of it.
Right.
And so last thing, the idea that you would try something new, because this is a new and different skill. Right? If you've done Toastmasters, then you might have a head start. If you've delivered a webinar, you might have a head start. If you've been live on videos or you've, hosted a significant number, you might have a head start in some way or another. But this is a new skill for everybody. And the idea that you would take on a new skill and be amazing at it the first time you try it is just ludicrous. You wouldn't do that with anything. Putting on ice skates for the first time, or putting on downhill skis for the first time, or a snowboard, or trying to speak Mandarin or German for the first time, or playing a musical instrument for the first time. You wouldn't expect to be good at any of these things, but somehow you think, well, I've turned my camera on before. I've spoken to other human beings before. I'm going to be amazing at this. Yeah, you have some skills that are transferable, but this in and of itself is a new combination of skills. And it is certainly one worth A, practicing through the discomfort on, and B, getting very good at. On the other side of that discomfort and vulnerability and awkwardness and fear of judgment and rejection. By the way, that's what all this is about. Humans just fear judgment and rejection. So one of the reasons we over criticize ourselves in a way that no one else ever would, it's just unfair, but we do it to protect ourselves and protect our egos and to assure that we don't get judged in such a way that we get rejected. This is all evolutionary psychology. And so on the other side of that discomfort, on the other side of the first, it could take you 3 videos. It could take you 10 videos. There's still videos that I send that I might get a little bit anxious about, because it's a big deal or the consequences are significant or whatever. It's insanely liberating and insanely powerful, this comfort and confidence in your own skin and getting more yeses based on who you are, not just like the intellectual exercise and pecking it out and getting into features and benefits and costs for people and having people try to make judgments based on that without you having delivered any degree of warmth or personality along with it, except maybe an emoticon if you're trying to like fun it up a little bit.
Yes.
It's just super powerful and liberating. And the transformation I've seen in people over the past decade that I've been doing this work is just a joy. It's what keeps me engaged a decade in.
So you raised the point that live video, whether it's in Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube, people are, first of all, a lot more forgiving if it's not polished because you don't have time to polish it. But furthermore, you don't have to spend the time to polish it. So you can come out with a lot more material that way too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, in the new book, we interviewed 11 different experts on a variety of topics, all to kind of work our way around this. Like, how do we actually connect and communicate digitally, virtually, and online, knowing that all of us are going to have to sell and serve a lot more often in the future in these spaces in the face of ever increasing digital noise and pollution. And one of them was Adam Contos, the CEO of Remax. And we got into his podcasting and his video journey. And that's exactly what he said. He's like, hey, I just do all these things live. That way I don't need to, I had to learn a bunch of stuff to get there. I had to get comfortable doing it. I have to develop the material and the topics, but I don't want to have to edit this stuff. So he just goes live for it. And it's the same thing with these video messages, like bang, 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 bang. Like, the most videos I've sent in one afternoon is just shy of 200. And I had other things I had to do that afternoon. And the thing is, you just get, you're excited about what you're doing. You believe in it. You want to share it with other people, or you want to open up an opportunity for someone, or you want to solve their problem or answer their question. And it's just record, 3, 2, 1, go, stop, send. Yeah. And then in the replies and responses, you get validate that it's absolutely a different and better way to share some messages. Not all messages are appropriate for a video message, by the way.
Well, and that was something I was going to ask is, when do you choose to go for text instead?
I'll flip it on you for the sake of viewers and listeners. Like, the 3 times that video is absolutely better than typed out text. And I know there's a chapter in Rehumanize called 10 times video beats text. This kind of like layers up over top of that. One is establishing or reestablishing personal connection. And you and I already told that story off the top of this conversation, which is we felt like we knew each other before we ever met, right? So establishing or reestablishing personal connection. So if you haven't seen someone in a while, or you just met them at, like, some people are going to conferences and events and trade shows again. So following up with, you collect some business cards, you make some new LinkedIn connections. When you get home, you send a few personal video messages and just kind of like reestablish that, like, oh yeah, I remember him. That was a great conversation. I really enjoyed that. Right. So establishing or reestablishing personal connection, much better done in video. The second one is managing emotion or tone. And this is also in Rehumanize. Positive is, of course, thank you, good job, congratulations, I've been thinking about you. I was excited to see ... right? You saw something on social media and you just want, like, you liked it, you commented, but you also want to follow on and say, like, man, I'm just so excited about you. I know you've been working on, like, doing things that you couldn't do and typing out a little comment on the post, right? So that's positive. And those positive messages, if you're sincere in your message, there's nothing better that you could do than send a video to communicate that. On the other side, though, and not all of these are negative, I'm using the word positive or negative, but breaking bad news, making an apology, I'm sorry to hear, providing perhaps some corrective feedback, right? Like, if you have to, this is fantastic for internal use. It's not just for customers. So if we need to provide some corrective feedback to our team members, and I think you read the story of, I think, a college professor in there who provides video feedback, just the red lines on the paper, because you can describe it in a different way in a video, in a way that makes people feel seen and appreciated, not just judged and criticized. So managing emotion and tone, positive and negative. And then the third one is detail or complexity. Anything that's difficult to describe. It's going to take you 3 to 5 paragraphs, and it's going to be time consuming for you. You're going to be so much better off just hitting record and talking to people, describing things in layperson's terms, or perhaps even using a screen recording to kind of show and tell, to walk people through things. So personal connection, emotion and tone, detail or complexity, definitely done better in video. There are other use cases, but as people are thinking about the messages that they're sending throughout their day, or they're trying to structure customer communication or new employee communication, or these types of things, anytime you're trying to take on a communication task, either a micro one, like I need to reply to this person, how am I going to do it? Or whether it's a macro one, like I need to design a system or a process. Those three filters are definite video go-tos.
Thanks to COVID, many jobs have been done from home. You and I are both, I believe this is your home.
It is not my home. This room is much bigger than every room in my home, except perhaps my living room and my kitchen.
Okay. Well, it's a lovely space.
Thank you. It's 5 minutes from my home. I come here because it's quiet and it's got amazing internet connection.
Okay. But many of us are working from home these days, and we're relying on Zoom a lot, not just for one-on-one meetings like this, but for group meetings. And I don't know if this is one of your definitions of digital pollution, but people are really talking about Zoom fatigue. They're being invited to meetings. They have to sit there pretty much motionless. Maybe they don't even get called on. They have to worry about looking riveted the whole time. Do you have any advice for people who are planning such meetings and making it so that it's more engaging for people?
Yes, absolutely. That is a fantastic observation. First and foremost, I would say, does this need to be a Zoom meeting? Or does this need to be a meeting at all?
Right.
So I'll address that for a minute, and then we'll go back into the core question. Could this be a walk and talk by telephone?
Mm-hmm.
That's like that. There's, walking is fantastic. So many leaders and people have done amazing things that we all benefit from today, did a lot of walking, and there's something about that process. And so this idea of like freeing your mind by getting away from the flat screen and being somewhere else in the physical activity, the blood flow, the brain activity. I find walking meetings, whether it's with someone in person or by phone, is a really nice substitute in a lot of cases. Now, that doesn't work for, if you need to get 5 or 6 people together. I don't know that that's the best call.
No.
But certainly for one-on-ones or intimate meetings. Another idea too, and this goes to video messaging, is that one of the best roles for video messages is what I call the in-between. It's too much for a plain old email, but it's not quite enough for a meeting. We've all been in that meeting that everyone's like, yeah, that could have just been an email. And we've all gotten that email that was like, in an email exchange back and forth, we're like, we could have solved this with like a 90-second phone call or a Zoom call, right? So it's really making sure we're finding the right tool for the right job is a key thing. As for Zoom meetings themselves, you are right. Even if you are engaged, you might look disengaged, and that is bad for everybody else on the call. It also creates, especially for the host or whoever's, got the greatest emotional and cognitive stake in the meeting itself, that's a negative perception for you. So something that we talk about in human-centered communication, 2 different people, and I go into the background of who they are. They're both awesome women, both advised turning it up a little bit. In a way that's still authentic to you, but turn it up a little bit, because our default face, Julie Hansen calls it RBF, resting business face.
Yes, well done.
This is kind of like flat face where like we could be actually listening intently, but we look like we could not care less. And so this idea of just like overexpressing a little bit, A, it keeps you plugged in. B, it makes clear to other people. And so simple things like you're doing, head nods. Like I know that what I'm saying is interesting to you because you're smiling and nodding your head. So consciously doing those things until they become a bit more habitual. Now I'm speaking now to the participant, not the person hosting the meeting. I'll flip in just a minute. Something else that's kind of like keeps me engaged and makes meetings more fun. I'll either take notes, and I'll let people know that I'm taking notes, and then I'll typically share them with other people. Just that activity alone keeps me engaged in what's happening. And it's productive for other people. Gosh, thank you so much for the notes. It's amazing. Like it's a nice value add for other people. The discipline of stopping multitasking. And I still struggle with this one myself. It's so freaking easy.
Yep.
Especially if it's a meeting where where there are like 6 or more people, where your odds of getting called on are like 20% or lower, to have other stuff open. It's such a disservice to yourself and the other people. If you don't need to be in the meeting, have the courage to withdraw from the meeting. If you're not sure if you should be in the meeting, but you get invited, it's not, and I don't care who invited you to the meeting, unless I guess we could find exceptions. I won't make up any right now, but it is certainly within your right, and it's not unreasonable. And it's probably an exercise that more people inviting people to meetings should be doing, replying back and saying, hey, got that invite. I'd be happy to attend. It is open on my calendar. I just want to make sure that I'm going to be useful to the other people in the meeting, or, what can I expect to get out of this meeting? That's not, you're going to do it in a way that's not disrespectful, but making sure that you're in meetings that you belong in is another one. As for hosting a meeting or having some level of responsibility for it being engaging and productive, one, use the chat. Use the chat. Use the, Zoom gives you the thumbs up and a bunch of other things. If someone else is talking, I acknowledge them, not just by smiling and nodding, but also by throwing up thematic, little icons in the corner. That keeps me and other people engaged. It validates the person who's speaking. That lets them know that they're on the right track. I will add things into the chat, either as additional questions without distracting from the core conversation, or links to things that other people are talking about. So if I catch myself multitasking, I'll turn it into something productive, and I'll be like, oh, that person just mentioned this book. And so I'll go look it up and drop a link in. Right. Other people can check it out too, that kind of thing. And so, and don't be afraid to call on people. If you have invited 5 people to the meeting, I'm going to assume that you have a reason that all 5 of those people should be there. And if you haven't heard from one, ask, engage everybody in the meeting, and validate their response in some particular way. A good habit for that is to restate what you think you heard from someone, and perhaps ask for clarification or for validation, thumbs up, yep, that's exactly what I meant, for your benefit and the benefit of other people.
So I run a few scheduled meetings where it's every week we're meeting at this time. 2 in particular are the people that I work closest with. And I just want to explore a little bit more what you said about, if there's no reason to be there. I struggle with that because it is a scheduled meeting, and I would like everybody to be there. And I've even sort of threatened to reduce the frequency. And the response has been, no, we'd like to keep doing this because we like to be plugged in. It may not be exactly what is going on in my life. And I do actually think it's fine if they go screen off and do something while we're talking about something that doesn't affect them. I guess I have the advantage that it's a very fun, charismatic team, right? So they all get along, and it's not like they're desperate to not be there. I can count on them to stay engaged. But I just wonder how you calibrate around inviting people for basically a sense of cohesion and involvement, as opposed to every topic on the agenda is going to necessarily require them.
That's a really, really good question. It makes me think of we have a standing 2.5-hour leadership meeting every Tuesday morning. It's got a very specific structure. It tends to be highly productive, and we will bring people in for specific 15, perhaps even 30 minutes of time, not just to come in and give a presentation, but we're going to talk about a topic in particular. This person has a lot to add on it, or is the person on the front lines of that issue or that topic, and we'll bring them in for that period. So I like this idea that you have an agenda. That's important. That lets other people know, where are we going here? And this permission to come and go, as long as everyone understands what's going on, and it doesn't come across to anyone else like this person is, of their own accord, just saying I don't need this, because that cohesion, it sounds like this isn't an issue for you. I'm now speaking to other people that are thinking about their own meetings and their own teams. I think a key thing is making sure that everyone understands what the rules of engagement are. And that if this is not, hey, where we're going next, this is especially relevant to you two. It might not be relevant to you three. Everyone is welcome to be here. This is probably going to take us about 15 minutes. So if you need to go take care of something else, do, but be sure to come back. Like, as long as everyone understands the rules of engagement, then that makes sense. What this also makes me wonder, though, is should this be one big meeting, or should it be multiple smaller meetings? Obviously that's for each person and each team to decide. I do love, one of my favorite things about the way you set that question up was that you sought feedback from the people who are in the meeting.
Right.
Do you want this? Oh, we want this. And I mean, that, by the way, high point, and then I'll give it back to you. That also reminds me of a class guy. I attribute it in my mind to Seth Godin, but I'm sure multiple people have said it in different ways, which is if people miss it when it's gone, like, that's good marketing. So if you've been sending an email and you're like, I'm just going to blow it off this month, and 3 people are like, whoa, what happened to that email? I love this email. Like, that's really good. So this idea that you're doing meetings that people are like, no, don't stop this meeting. Like, that's good. It's a super positive sign. And asking for that feedback specifically, I think, is critical.
Have you ever seen the movie Swimming with Sharks?
I don't think that I have.
There's a line. It's about a movie executive, and there's a line in it. Somebody rushes up to the executive and says, they can't start the meeting without you. And he turns to his other assistant and he says, you see, a meeting that can't start without you, that's a meeting worth going to. So I thought that was that was a memorable line for me.
It is really funny.
So what are you touched on some of the ingredients to a good space to record in. It's quiet. You're not going to be disturbed. Talk to me a little bit about how you recommend people set up their space for video recording.
Sure. I think one of the reasons I was really happy to move back into this office is that it's got a lot of depth.
Right.
It's really deep.
Mm-hmm.
I don't always have that privilege. When I was working directly at home, which was in my bedroom, I didn't have that privilege, but I did set it up on alongside of a wall. Yeah. I think one of the things several things here, you have to use the space that you have available. But I think if you can go on an angle against a wall or something long, if you can work a corner of the room in, it just has a little bit more depth and interest to it. Another thing something I really like about what you're doing here. I don't know who made that painting.
My son and I.
Fantastic. Yeah. A little personal touch. You've got some greenery. You've kindly got a book that I co-authored.
Very good book. Yes.
Behind you, and a bookshelf in general. You've got a mug. I'm sure there's a story behind that mug. You've got this blend of like personal and professional. It's a tidy looking space. And so I think just being aware, and I would expect that at this point, most people, unless they're moving into a new space, have seen themselves on camera enough that they've made just small tweaks along the way. It's not going to be perfect on day one. But one of the things that I would encourage people to avoid, if they can, is being pressed right up against a flat wall, just because it gives some depth, it gives some interest. Not bad.
It's not bad.
Not bad. But imagine if those two pieces.
If I was pressed up right against it, I would look trapped.
Or if those two pieces of furniture weren't there, it's just you in a beige wall, which it's not bad. It's better than something that's like crazy, noisy, messy. So I generally prefer tidy. This is actually a space, you can tell I've been struggling with the lighting as we go here because the sun just went behind the mountains. I'm trying to work these two lights that are in front of me. Neither of them is pointed at me directly, but I just moved back into this space. I was in this room I'm in an office in downtown Colorado Springs. I was upstairs on the 7th floor for a few months, and I was in this office for a couple of years prior to having to go back up. But I had the opportunity to come back down. It's a better space, but I'm still trying to figure out like the lighting. And that's another interesting thing. Windows are really great, but they're also very challenging because the light obviously changes throughout the day. And so having these adjustments on the fly, this is an especially dramatic time of the day, pretty much between right now, this time as we're recording this here in the late fall, early winter. 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. The light's pretty consistent. It comes in the back and then it just moves forward. It kind of like backlights me as I was beautifully lit at the beginning of this conversation.
I like that. Yeah.
And then it disappears behind the mountain and you're like, it gets low on the angle. So it's shooting right into the webcam. And, so natural light adds a lot to a space, but it also can be challenging because of course it moves. That's
the cliche, right? We're burning daylight here. You've only got, you were in golden hour when we started the call.
Yeah. For like 5 minutes. Yeah.
So I wanted to touch on a couple of things you brought up there. I mean, a couple of observations I would add is the microphone is critical, and it doesn't have to be expensive, but it has to be close.
Yep.
And then the other thing is you and I share an affliction, which is wearing glasses.
Yeah. That's
so having
difficult.
like, I have a light there, which I don't know if you can see a reflection of, and then one there and one there. But because I'm looking at the camera, right? I can't do what everybody
else does. Yeah.
So that's a couple of things is because cameras love
pro
light.
Pro tip there. More light is always better than less.
Yeah.
Although my camera's struggling right now. I have two lights. I have fluorescence overhead. Then I have these two lights on the sides here. And neither one of them is pointed at me directly for that exact reason, because you would see it plain as day that it's reflecting in my glasses. And so I just bounce it off the wall in front of me. When I was in my bedroom at home, I put up like one of those poster boards in the corner and bounced a light, like it was pushed up in a corner. So it would bounce off and come like kind of in a big fill, but like in this diffused way. Yeah.
Well done.
So, light in front of you is fantastic if you can do it, but there are challenges for those of us with glasses.
So talk to me about the Zygarnic. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Zygarnic Effect?
Yes. Set it up for me a little bit more.
So it's from your book, and basically it's the idea, if I interpret it correctly, you say, I have 3 reasons why the Zygarnic Effect is important.
Oh, yes.
And people won't let you go until you get to point 3. It's a way of engaging people and hooking them in a little bit.
Yeah. It's this idea of we just want to finish the puzzle. We want to close the loop. We want to tie up the loose ends. That one, by the way, I had to ask because A, it's been a little while, and B, that was from Steve, my co-author, my longtime friend and team member, chief marketing officer here at BombBomb, huge into essentially behavioral psychology.
Sure.
And so so we want to complete these things. And so this idea, and this works for things besides videos, by the way, anything that you want to bring people through, a numbered sequence as you offered is a really good one, kind of like starting an idea in a subject line and continuing it in the body of the email. Promising something in a video thumbnail, right? Like I don't have my whiteboard with me, but oftentimes I'll use a whiteboard and I'll write, someone's name, but also like a little promise on there, like, 2 surprising things that happened today, Tim, right?
Or 30 seconds well spent or something like that. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. It's like, okay, what is this person talking about? This is just this kind of intrigue, the curiosity layer, just the idea that I need to finish the task. I need to, like, if there are 3 things, I at least want to know what they are. And of course, the fine line we have to walk here, because immediately someone watching or listening is probably thinking about things like
listicles.
Exactly the word I was about to say. So good. Love it. Listicles and then also just like any clickbait type stuff where it's like, and you won't believe number 6,
right.
And number 7 came out of nowhere.
Yeah. This changes everything.
Yeah. It's so funny because here's a big lesson. And this was a key theme in human-centered communication. With all of these digital messages and experiences that we're creating for people, we're obviously asking for someone's time and attention. These are the 2 most valuable things that people can give us, assuming that you're the type of person that's listening to a show like this and investing in yourself and growing in your career. I'm going to assume that most of your basic needs are met, and you get to worry about other things like how to grow revenue, right? And how to increase my business and these other things. So, which is a privileged situation. So we're asking people to pay with their most valuable things. And if they pay us their time or attention once and we fail them because it was an overpromise and an under delivery, And this is true of our products and services as well. If I subscribe for the first month, I don't get what I was expecting. I don't get the benefit, the outcome, the result, the solution, the whatever. I'm wary now. And I might pay you for another month, or I might open your next email, or I might play your next video in my social feed. And now we're getting into, I forget the, fool me once, shame on me type scenario, but sure. Or shame on you, shame on me. But it's that, right? So it doesn't take long to understand. And then I'll close this with a fun little personal story. It doesn't take long for people to understand.
That was a Zygarnic Effect right there.
Yeah, it was teasing. That's like shallow teasing. The answer in 15 seconds after I finish what I'm saying right now. It doesn't take long for us to understand that this is not worth our time and attention. And so not only will they not and we're pattern making machines. And so we're calculating all of this subconsciously. And it's like, okay, I might not open that person's email. In fact, it might be an immediate swipe delete going forward because, the last 3 ones, they weren't about me. They weren't relevant. They weren't useful. It didn't satisfy the promise that they were making. This person or this brand or this email address or this logo is not worth my time or attention. That's the pattern that's being established. The extra trouble right now, 2 of them. One is that this is all happening in a noisy and polluted environment. So your likelihood of getting someone's attention in the first place is threatened and challenged. The idea of building trust is threatened and challenged because of the environment that you're creating these in. And then second, the machines are learning from the people. So the people are learning from what you're putting in front of them and behaving accordingly. And the machines are now following everything that the people are doing and not doing. Dwell time, clicks, replies, all this is being tracked. And so I don't know if you remember when Gmail introduced the tabbed inbox and all the email marketers freaked out, like, how dare you put my promotional email in the promotion tab? I only sent it to 5,000 people with my own best interests in mind. How dare you sort this thing? That is just a lightweight version of the increasing curation that the machines are going to do for us because the noise is only going to increase. And so what patterns are we creating for the people we need and want to engage? And what are they teaching the machines? Because the machines will dictate our future opportunities to get back in front of them. And now the quick fun story on how quickly humans learn. It's so my son is a huge roller coaster fanatic, knows all the manufacturers, knows all the rides, knows all the parks, knows all the styles and safety features and blah, blah, blah. So he's watched and he's learned a ton of it by watching YouTube videos and a whole bunch of different styles. And so, we started watching them together because it's just a fun kind of father-son thing. And I was really engaged. And then I take him to a bunch of roller coaster parks. So now I know more. And so I'm more engaged and interested in the park visits and stuff. And I'm like super hyped, like, oh yeah, definitely have to go to Charlotte to get to Carowinds, because they've got, Fury 325. So all these things. So, he immediately learned which thumbnails were garbage and which weren't. I was like, oh, that one looks good. He goes like, no. Dad, look at what's going on in this thumbnail. Because I'm not judging these thumbnails. I'm not judging the video titles.
You're looking at the title probably.
Yeah. But he, it took him 10 or 15, samples where he clicked 2 or 3 bad ones. And he knows that class of thumbnail and video title is never touch again.
Right.
Never touch it again. So their ad revenue is shrinking because
probably suffering.
You fool me once, but you're not going to fool me 2 or 3 or 4 times because I'm a smart human being and I am a pattern making machine. And you have totally overpromised and underdelivered with this thumbnail and video title.
So I want to touch on your role at BombBomb.
Sure.
You are described as a Chief Evangelist. So let's talk a little bit about what BombBomb is. I mean, we've talked briefly about how you and I have exchanged messages using the service, but there are multiple uses for the videos we record in this fashion. Can you talk a little bit about what we can do with the videos we record?
Sure. You're talking like technically, or are you talking kind of?
Yeah, for example, can I use the video in a message in LinkedIn? Can I use the message?
Oh, yeah. There you go. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So BombBomb is a video messaging platform We have a web app that you can log into at BombBomb.com, and you can bring in lists of people. You can construct emails like you can in like MailChimp or Constant Contact, but video is integrated directly in. It's integrated into the video analytics as well as the email making process. You can do quick one-to-one sends out of the web app. We have mobile apps for iPhone and Android, so you can send videos by email there, or you can text them out to people. We have a Chrome extension where you can record videos from the top of Chrome. I do this all the time. And you can record or screen record or even pull an existing video out of your library and put it anywhere that you want. So I put it in LinkedIn messages. I put it in Slack messages. I don't use Facebook very much, and I try never to use Facebook Messenger anymore, but I will drop them in there. And the funny thing is now all these places have video features, but they're all compromised in some way. And by that, I mean like LinkedIn. I work at my desk all day. I'm not a mobile operator. I'm not using my smartphone to do LinkedIn very often.
Right.
And so, but the only place you can record a video in LinkedIn Messenger is from the mobile app. Okay. Well, that sets it off. So I work from my laptop almost all day.
Right.
So I can record there and take it, but then I can also see when the video gets played, how long the person watched, how many times it got played, which is a suggestion that maybe they shared it with other people, these types of things. Same thing with Slack. I think tracking is the key thing. And this idea too, of having a video that you recorded once and that you can use over and over again. Just to stay in LinkedIn, I haven't done it recently, but I have from time to time had a kind of a generic LinkedIn, hey, thanks for connecting video. I don't mention you by name. I just thank you for the connection. I introduce myself, a couple things that I like to post about and things that I'm happy to answer questions on, and just make myself available to people. And I'll just take that if I just don't have time to record a personal video, that's what I'll do. But I try to make them personal as often as possible. So you can't do that with some of these other video features because where do they live? They don't live anywhere. With BombBomb, they live in your video library and you can use them anywhere over and over again as much as you want. It could also be an answer to a frequently asked question. We also have direct integrations with a number of systems and platforms, including Salesforce, Outreach, Zendesk, a bunch of real estate and CRM platforms, because those are two businesses that we came up in and we built a lot of relationships in early on. With that Chrome extension, and by the way, also in the web app, I know I'm kind of moving around a lot, but not only can you get that link, but you can also get the embed code. And so what a lot of people are doing is taking the link or the embed code and using it in a variety of other systems too, that will accept that embed code. So
do the videos ever expire?
They don't, but they live as long as you want until you choose to delete them.
Okay, great. So I'm sort of imagining it, as you point out, for tech support. You know, that's often asynchronous. Somebody says, hey, I can't get into this, or it's not acting the way I expected. Screen share. You could even use it again.
Yeah, super powerful. And it's such a huge, there are stats, and you saw them because they're in Rehumanize Your Business. There's a number of amazing specific benefits that we have quantified in the customer service, customer support process using both personal videos and we call these evergreen videos, record it once and use it over and over again as appropriate. You might also think about it in terms of onboarding or even pre-sale. There are a number of steps that people might go through. And so you might set it up in your marketing automation system or some other system where it's like, as soon as these two things are true and this number falls between this range and this is false, automatically send this video message, right? And you're speaking to them. It's like, hey, by now, this and this are probably true. You're probably in this. You wouldn't say those things specifically, but by selecting specific trigger criteria for you to be triggered to manually send it, or for the system to be triggered to send it automatically, you can speak very specifically to where someone is and the things that people that are in their situation often wonder about. So you just want to get ahead of it proactively. And so there are a number of benefits to that.
And one of the advantages of it is the ease, because taking that professor example, the university professor, normally one would have to conjure up a file. You'd record your screen capture and your red circles and your annotation while you're speaking, and then you'd save it somewhere, and then you'd have to get it to the student somewhere. To see. Yeah. And so now it's just a matter of doing it right on the same page. You can take that link and drop it in. So
yeah, it's so
I can
funny.
see the advantages.
Yeah, for years, people say like, well, I can just do this myself. And I'm like, yeah, you can. Sure. Through those steps, and then putting it in YouTube so that it's hosted somewhere, marked as unlisted because it's not for your channel. And then you send the link, and then people have to wonder what's behind that link. Fortunately, YouTube is a decent, amazing,
good rep,
name brand. But and then the follow-up question is, well, so how many videos did you send last week or last month?
Sure,
none. Like,
I said I could. I didn't say I wanted to.
Yeah, it's all. Yeah. Well, or I said I could. I just didn't say that I actually had the wherewithal to do all those steps, Yeah.
So you and Steve Pacinelli have authored 2 books. So the second one is called Human-Centered Communication, and this is the first one. What is your process for writing, and was it easier the second time?
Great question. They were 2 dramatically different experiences. So I hit my 6-year full-time anniversary at BombBomb several years ago now. I just welled up with like excitement and pride at like, when I joined the company, we were fewer than 10 people. We had a couple hundred customers. A bunch of them weren't even paying us anything. It's just like, hey, would you use this and tell us how it's going? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, at 6 years, I forget where we were, but we were maybe at like 30 or 40,000 customers. And, we had grown to, I don't know, probably 100 employees by that point. And we'd kind of really pioneered this movement. And 2 things were happening at the time that I was really excited about. One, all of our kind of early competitors were either dead or functionally irrelevant. And we had picked up this new class of competitor. And now the 2 that I'm thinking of, one of them sitting on tens of millions of dollars of venture capital, and the other one sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars of venture capital. And it's from the, name brands in the venture capital space, the Bessemers and Sequoias and stuff. And which was just so validating for this vision that our co-founders had in 2006 when they legally founded the company. I joined the company full-time in 2011. Such early days. Here we are a decade later, and we're still trying to pioneer this movement. So flashback to my 6-year anniversary, I was all excited about kind of what was going on and how far we had come, and that we'd started this movement of kind of relationship orientation, restoring some of that in our digital communication, in the face of there are even, I don't know if there are more or fewer fears now about automation and AI, but certainly, in 2012, 13, 14, 15, there's still a lot more kind of like panic of like, what's going on? Where is this going? I think now the general accepted sentiment is for the most part, these machines and intelligent bots are being deployed to support us, not to replace us.
Right.
I think it's usually a duplicitous argument. Maybe the goal is actually to ultimately replace us, but first they got to befriend
some of us. Yeah.
Yeah. In any case, I wrote a blog post called "You Are a Pioneer." And it was just about this movement. And I ended up, just for fun and interest, I ended up just starting to sketch what it would look like as a book, and started writing it. I was probably 10 to 15,000 words into it before anyone besides my wife or son had any idea that I was working on it. And then, as I started talking about it a little bit internally with people that I worked with, and talked with a couple of friends in publishing, and they're like, is this your book? Is this a BombBomb book? Like, what is this? I was like, I don't know. How should I be thinking about this? And I just ended up on this path of creating a lot of excitement internally about it. I got Steve to come on as co-author. I'm in the weeds, like doing all the writing. He, in your Zygarnic Effect question, is a great example of it. He's right behind me. As soon as I get a chunk done, he's right behind me on like, hey, this is a great stat. Check out this article. Have you seen this research? Oh, I got a story for that, to bring that section to life. And so it's this really, really nice give and take relationship on it. And I pretty much had the vision for the whole thing from the get-go. When we ended up getting the publishing deal with Wiley, our editor had some like, we're so close to this, at that point I had been in it for 6 or 7 years, and I'd been doing project work with the 2 co-founders for a couple of years before I joined him full time as a team member. And so, we're really close to this stuff. And so he created some distance, like, you got to explain X, Y, and Z. I'm like, seems kind of boring to me, but okay. If it helps complete this. So that was that process, and it went pretty quickly. And I had it all in me And Steve had it all in him for the most part, because I had written hundreds of blog posts and done dozens of webinars and stage presentations on these. And Steve, of course, had too. And so we were just taking all of our best stories and examples and just putting them in this structured, sensible format that I hope you found digestible. Human-centered communication, on the other hand, Steve and I would playfully say to one another, like, hey, I got an idea for another book. And it's like, out of the gate, it was like, no, man, too soon, but at a certain point, that we started to get serious. And he said it to me, and I knew that he really meant it. And it was this idea of several ideas layered into one. One, it's not about we know that it's not about the tools. We know that it's not about video. Video is not about the technology. Video is about the people. It's your intent when you hit record. It's about the person on the other side. It's about how you make them feel. It's about what's in it for them. And we were seeing a variety of things that I won't bore you with. We're seeing a variety of things that are like, as obvious and intuitive as that may seem, it's very clear that that's not what's happening on a day-to-day basis in most businesses and organizations. So his idea was, I know how to sell this to Ethan, and we'll get other people to write the majority of it. So the original idea was all these experts that we feature in human-centered communication would submit chapters, and we'd just
the Tim Ferriss approach.
Yeah. And, we talked with a handful of people, we did pre-meetings, and it became very obviously immediately that no one was going to write anything. Like Matthew Sweezy from Salesforce, who wrote an excellent book called The Context Marketing Revolution. Love you guys. Believe in the message. Definitely want to participate. Not going to write anything. Shep Hyken, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, USA Today, bestselling author of like 8 or 9 books. Love you guys. Believe in the project. Definitely want to participate. Not going to write a chapter for you. So it turned into like, we're going to do our research, structure an interview, execute it, do some follow-up, and then, write individual chapters to teach each person's philosophy and practice. And so, chapters 3 through 13, each one features a different person and has a different personality to it and a different story arc to it. But each one of them is loaded with practical things that you can do. Some of the, there are several tips. I'm thinking of Lauren Bailey, the president and founder of Factor 8 and Girls Club. I'm thinking of Shep Hyken. I'm thinking of Dan Tyre, who's the 6th employee and the first salesperson at HubSpot. Those chapters, those 3 are among probably 5 or 6 that have very specific tips on your question earlier about how do we make these Zoom calls engaging for people, knowing that people are coming with a chip on their shoulder and short attention and short tolerance for this stuff. And so lots of practical stuff in there. So the approaches were much different when I started writing human-centered communication, because the core chapters, like 1 and 2 are human-centered digital pollution and then human-centered communication. Then we go 3 through 13 featuring people. 14 and 15 are strategic and then tactical roundups, where we make the different people in different chapters talk to each other. And of course, 16, as you might expect, is a look to the future.
Right.
I started chapters 3 through 13 with heavyweight outlines because we had the transcriptions from the interviews. We had done our research in advance. And so the outlines for those chapters were, 4,000 to 5,000 words each. And so it's just a matter of like ripping a lot of that stuff out, paring down the quotes, deciding which stories to keep and which stories to ditch. And, is more of a process of removing than building.
Yeah, that's tough. When you're not adding, you're removing. That can be heart-wrenching. What made you decide to go through a traditional publisher as opposed to self-publish?
Great question. So with Wiley, so as I was trying to figure out, really good question. So I got a lot to share here, but I'll keep it tight. That's why I'm delaying here. So one of the things I did when Rehumanize was in process was I reread books written by people I knew and then asked them if they would talk about their process. And some of them were self-published, some were formal published. One guy, Chris Smith, one of the co-founders of a company called Curator, he had done 3 books, one totally self, one kind of hybrid self, and one traditional publisher. And after doing that, we narrowed it down to, we either want to go with Wiley or Greenleaf. Greenleaf is kind of an a la carte, white glove self-publisher. Mm-hmm. And Wiley, we opted to go with A, zero upfront costs, B, some credibility. If you look at, I'm looking around like I have a bookshelf here. I just literally just moved back into this room today, so I don't have any books here. Actually, I do. I have 3, and one of them is from Wiley.
Right.
When Steve and I looked at our bookshelves, there's a lot of Wiley there, nonfiction, business book publishing. They're prolific. And I wanted to be able to say something like, from the publishing team that brought you category defining books like Inbound Marketing from HubSpot, Behind the Cloud from Salesforce, Customer Success from Gainsight, comes a new category defining book on video messaging from the folks at BombBomb. So that's what we wound up doing. We felt like it added credibility. We didn't know what we were doing at all. There's a lot to learn about this space, and there are a lot of bad decisions you can make and a lot of pitfalls, a lot of potential for it. So we went with Wiley, and that was a really good experience. And then for the second one, we ended up going to Greenleaf. We talked to Wiley about it, but we ended up going with Greenleaf. And Steve's main idea there was like, well, it's going to be fine either way, but we'll learn a whole bunch of other things if we go a different route. Yeah. And one of our goals there was to, they also manage the Fast Company imprint, which you have to kind of submit an additional prospectus on, and they have to evaluate whether or not this fits their kind of like brand. And so it released on Fast Company Press, which was our goal in the first place, because we do think that there's a lot of business innovation as like a foundational piece.
And the same audience too, for sure.
Yeah, totally. So, for example, in early 2022 at some airports, there's going to be a code display of the current issue of Inc., the current issue of Fast Company, and books from those imprints. And so you'll see human-centered communication at, I don't know, it's like 80 airports or something, because the brand, like the brand affinity there and what we're speaking to in the spirit of it and the message of it, they found is sufficiently brand aligned. And so in this one, the royalty rate's better. We got a little bit more control. Wiley gave us a ton of control. Our team designed the cover and the interior layout. They executed it. In this one, we got to make even further decisions, like the gloss and emboss on the cover and on the back cover. Our art team got to do that. There's multiple paths. We had to front the cost though. We had to front the cost on this. Sure. We actually had to print the books. They help us, but we have to manage the inventory. And, if you're looking to do a book self-published and you're going to do it cheaper than we did, you better be prepared to make a lot more decisions. It's interesting. And by the way, for anyone watching or listening at this point in the conversation, because this is not early, you've made a commitment to spend time with me and Tim. Feel free to reach out to me. It's just Ethan, ETHAN at BombBomb.com. I've published a few things on the process, a couple podcast episodes on my own show, a personal blog post that I wrote. And I know that it is a complex, and I'm not a master of this by any means. I've only done it twice, but, we've had a couple successful launches, and, we hit the Wall Street Journal bestseller list, which was really exciting this time. It was one of our goals for the launch. And there are a key number of factors that allowed us to achieve that. One of them being we roped a bunch of other experts in that had a stake in making sure people knew about it. But, and by the way, video messages, personal one-to-one video messages played a very important role in a successful launch of the book too. So in any case, I'm happy to share what I've learned, even though I'm no expert in this at all. But there are so many difficult decisions, blind spots, pitfalls, et cetera. At a certain point, you are the product. There's an entire business built on capitalizing on your interest in having a book released. Yeah. And not all of it is in your favor. And it's hard to know.
Yeah. Well, that's a ton of really good advice. And I appreciate you sharing the other sources of connecting with you as well. So my last question, and you actually sort of brought it up a little bit when you said that you have a chapter about the future in your second book. Thanks to Facebook's recent announcement, there's been a lot of interest. They're announcing they're going to go into Meta, right? That they're becoming Meta, has brought a lot of interest to AR and VR, which many people might say is an effort to be even more present in the way we communicate with one another. Do you see that having any impact to the kind of work that BombBomb does?
I can. First, let's accept that the vision is still far off. We've seen how slow, I'll just say in my seat here at BombBomb over the past decade, I've seen how slow this goes. I think the one advantage, just doubling back into the conversation of this being who you are as you are and letting go and just being yourself for a while, some like the avatar type scenario takes care of some of that. I've seen a couple of the videos that Facebook has released around. It's this idea that you get to like make yourself up over again. Like it reminds me of Dwight Schrute in Second Life on The Office, which is just an amazing episode. He's actually a paper salesman. He's actually the exact same person, but I think he can fly. Hilarious. He's dressed the same. But like you can reinvent yourself in a way kind of like, I think it'll be interesting. It's one of the reasons too that we wanted to make sure that people that were engaging with us and thinking about video messaging and video email today are thinking about it in a bigger, better way than a lot of the way that it's being bought and sold right now, which is this very like kind of myopic view of like, this is at some point it's become synonymous with video prospecting. And it's like, that's one use case. It's okay, but that's just so small relative to the opportunity in front of us. And so I don't know how it will change our technology over time. I do think that there's a very real honesty and vulnerability in this style of communication. I would personally rather get on a Zoom call with 6 people than to put a headset on and fake myself up and pretend like I'm in a room with a bunch of other people. Like but I don't think anyone would accuse me of being a Luddite. I'm definitely risk averse. I definitely like what I'm familiar with, but most humans do. But all that on the table, I still think there's something very honest about what you and I are doing right now on a Zoom call and what you and I did going back and forth with video messages that I don't think the metaverse solves.
Yeah.
Or it's early imagination.
Well, I mean, it depends if you and I are both looking at the same engine block, but we're 10 states apart. And we're talking about how to fix it. That might be a really interesting use case. So I can see when our focus is not actually on each other, but on a shared space.
Great.
That would be really interesting.
Absolutely. Co-working and collaborating. Yeah. Really interesting. That's a fantastic use case. So that's it. That goes back to the heart of all of this, the right tool for the right job. Absolutely. Let's not just get and this is the problem. And we talk about it a lot in human-centered communication. And frankly, this book was motivated by some of the problems we saw about the implementation of these ideas, is that so many people are all about the tool. They're all about the technology, and they're losing sight of why any of it matters at all. What gives it meaning, what gives it purpose, what gives it value, what produces useful outcomes for people, whether that's money or a problem solved or an opportunity capitalized upon, or usually those two things are, on different sides of some kind of a value exchange. We're losing sight of that, or it's easy to lose sight of it because we're just so enamored of the things that we can set up and automate and trigger and blah, 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 or just the fact that it's new alone. And like that, because I start to self-identify. I'm the guy that does all the new stuff, and so like, I'm just always doing new stuff, but it's like, it's more about experimenting with the stuff than it is about actually serving or helping other human beings. Yeah. And so as long as we stay rooted in that, I think we'll be much better off in applying technologies old and new.
Well, Ethan, thank you so much for bringing so much value today to this conversation. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate the thought and care you put into the conversation. I really enjoyed it. I appreciate you getting into the book, and I appreciate the invitation.
My pleasure. My guest today was Ethan Beute. Links to Ethan's books and his LinkedIn profile will be in the show notes. My name is Tim Hampton, and you can reach me at tim@unusuallywellinformed.com. Thanks for listening. I hope you will subscribe and join me for the next show with another unusually well-informed leader in business and technology.
Thank you for listening to the Unusually Well-Informed podcast.
The opinions expressed by the host and guests on the Unusually Well-Informed podcast are their own and do not reflect that of their employer or any other affiliation.